Robotic affirming. The first time I came across this concept, I have to admit, I thought that is the dumbest thing I've ever heard of. There is no way that is going to manifest anything. But I keep hearing success stories and people seem to really like this technique. So I thought, let's do a deep dive into why that might be. Hi, I'm Rosie Blythe. I'm the author of the Princess Guide to Life book series, and on this channel we talk about everything from spirituality to money to books and everything in between. So this is the first time I've done a full video all about manifestation, so I hope you like it. So robotic affirmation has been a bit of a hot topic for a while now. Just before I start, I want to talk about the difference between a regular affirmation and robotic. So affirming has always been part of the self-help and manifestation practice for a lot of people. And generally, the idea is that you get into the feeling of what you're saying and you really start to try and believe it. Robotic affirmation, also known as mindless affirmation, is not like that at all. You basically take a phrase and you just say it over and over and over again with no feeling. So there is no pressure on you to try and conjure up imaginary feelings of happiness or success that you don't feel. But you're also just droning on going, I'm successful, without any kind of feeling. So yeah, I have my doubts about how effective this can be. But then I guess the people who have success with this are the ones who believe it's going to work, because that's how it works. So I'm going to start with 5 reasons why I think robotic affirmation doesn't really work, or why it's not the best technique. And then, fear not, if you're a fan of it, I'm going to end with 5 reasons why I think it could work. If you're a big fan of robotic affirmation and you're using it successfully to manifest everything that you want in your life, then you don't need this video. Just keep doing what you're doing. It's working great for you. But if you have been using robotic affirmation because everyone else is and everyone says how great it is, and you're wondering why it's not working for you because you're doing exactly the same thing that everyone else is doing, I hope that this video might provide you with some explanations for why it might not be working for you and hopefully kind of steer you in a direction that will work for you. First of all, there seems to be a growing trend in the manifestation community to get rid of emotion. The argument seems to be to leave behind the law of attraction teaching, which is get into a high frequency, high vibe, happy place. Everyone's like, no, you don't need to do that. You don't need to do that. So what you need to do is repeat something over and over again. So if you get into the science, the quantum entanglement, the quantum physics, there's a lot of talk about vibration and frequency. And I know some people have kind of like, oh no, that's law of attraction, that's boring, we're on to law of assumption now. And Neville Goddard of law of assumption fame, he taught that the feeling is the secret. I think it's got to be, you've got to address this, that it doesn't really matter what you say, it matters what you believe. So you could say anything until you're blue in the face, but words don't matter, energy matters. If you're just saying stuff over and over again and it's not actually changing your thoughts on that thing, then you're just saying stuff. It's all about getting into that feeling of having the thing that you want. So, I don't know, let's say you are a runner and you want to win a race. So you might picture yourself over and over again, crossing that finish line. And what would that moment feel like? Your heart would be pounding. Maybe you see the faces of the people around you as you cross that finish line. Maybe you hear them cheering and your legs are trembling because you've been running so fast and you feel the sweat pouring off you. Okay, so you get into a real vision of how that would feel. Triumphant. Oh, feels so good. Contrast that with saying, I win the race, I win the race, I win the race, I win the race. Which one do you think is going to radiate more power out into the universe? I think it's going to be the one where you feel stuff. And it's the same if you imagine that moment when you realise you have a winning lottery ticket. Just get into that feeling of the disbelief, the excitement, the joy. Versus you just saying, I'm a millionaire, I'm a millionaire, I'm a millionaire, I'm a millionaire. There's no contest. The other thing about robotic affirmation is if it were the technique doing it, it would work exactly the same way for everybody all the time. So if your friend said, oh, well, my boyfriend proposed because I robotically affirmed that he would 10 million times. Then if you also robotically affirm 10 million times, then it would make your boyfriend do the same, right? And if he doesn't, then obviously there's something else at play, and it's not the words, it's not the repetition, it's the way it affects you. It's always going to be the answer. So I want you to think about something that at one point you didn't have and you really wanted it. So let's say You manifested your perfect prom dress. You had a particular vision in mind, and then you found the perfect dress in a shop. You had that wonderful feeling of buying it, taking it home, wearing it. So now, just think about, at your prom, how much time did you spend going, I have the perfect prom dress, I have the perfect prom dress, I have the perfect prom dress? You didn't, did you? You were too busy having fun in that prom dress. And this is my second big issue with robotic affirmation. It is in no way living in the end. Nobody recites something that they have. So for instance, I manifested the boat that I live in. I really wanted to live in a boat. It took me a while to find the right one. And all the time I was scripting, I was visualizing. And now I live in my boat. I absolutely love it. But one thing I never do, I never sit around and say, I live in a boat, I live in a boat, I live in a boat, I live in a boat. I just don't, because I live here. Why would I do that? But I tell you what I do. I sometimes will just sit there, of an evening with my glass of wine and look around and go, oh, I love living here. Or like with my dog, I manifested my dog. And again, it took me a while to go from deciding I wanted to get a dog to actually finding the right one. I don't ever sit around and just go, I have a dog, I have a dog, I have a dog. But I do look at him and think, oh my gosh, he's so cute. I do just gaze upon his little face and think, oh, you're so adorable. And I will, when we're on walks, I'll be walking along going, oh, this is so nice. What a lovely day for a walk. So in these examples where I have the thing that I wanted, I've manifested it, I never ever robotically affirm that I have it, but I do take a moment to look at it and feel the feeling of like, oh, I love having this thing that I always wanted and now I've got. So even if I'm using words, say for instance I said, isn't it nice when we sit on the deck of the boat on a summer evening and watch the world go by? I'm not saying it in like a monotone. I'm not going, it's so nice, it's so nice, it's so nice, it's so nice. I'm living in that moment and then saying words that express the feeling that I'm having in that moment. So regular affirming, as opposed to robotic, it's more realistic when it comes to living in the end, because you're essentially projecting yourself into the future where you have that thing you want, you're feeling whatever emotion that brings up, and then you're coming up with an affirmation that expresses that emotion, deliberately taking emotion out of it and saying, oh no, I'm going to do it robotically, I'm going to do it mindlessly. Like, really? There's such a difference in energy as well. Like if you imagine just fully immersing yourself in that experience, you're in that moment, you're feeling the joy, satisfaction, comfort, whatever it is that you think you're going to feel when you have that thing, versus pounding out a repetition of an affirmation. Like that just feels so desperate to me. It has a real desperate energy about it. And it's like you're trying so hard, trying to get there. Like if I say this enough times, I'm going to get there, I'm going to get there. And it's like, no, just relax. Just sink into the feeling. It's so much nicer. So my third point against robotic affirmation is that when you think about people who have verifiable success in their field, they don't tend to use this. So when I say verifiable success, I mean like not an online comment, because I feel like a lot of the success stories are just online comments, and who knows what is going on in those people's lives. And even YouTubers, when they're like, oh yeah, I manifest everything that I want in my life, and you're like, okay, I have no way to check that because I just go by what you're telling me on screen. And I'm including myself in that, obviously. I think you can see I live in a boat. And you've probably met my dog in blooper reels. I mean, there's a reason why this isn't used by the CIA. They do a lot of research into this stuff. They do like remote viewing, quantum entanglement. Don't think they've been doing robotic affirmations. But if they do, I mean, if whoever gets to be president says, oh yeah, I just said it a million times and did the trick. Until that happens, I'm going to be cynical about this. So I did some research and I was looking at celebrities who have talked about their beliefs in law of attraction or manifestation, whatever we want to call it. So I think one of the most famous ones is Jim Carrey. There's a video or various videos of him where he's talking about how he would drive up into the hills and look out on Hollywood and visualize, people telling him how great he was. And he wrote a check for himself for $10 million. And he put like a 3-year deadline on it. And then just at the end of that 3-year deadline, he got $10 million for Dumb and Dumber. Oprah Winfrey has always talked about it a lot. The one clip that I just watched this morning was she was saying about you make a vision board and then you just like set it and forget it. You've got to let it go. Ashley Graham talked about making vision boards, showing the particular magazine covers that she wanted to get. And she said it took 2 years, but she got it. Beyonce visualizes her performances. She said all her best performances, she's seen them beforehand. Arnold Schwarzenegger was talking about how he would win a particular award, and he said he'd won it so many times in his mind that it was just like there was no doubt he was going to win it in real life. And there are all these stories and people, and it's interesting because they're all using different techniques, you know, like writing yourself a check, visualizing stuff, vision boards. Nobody says they used robotic affirmation. And the closest I could find was Jennifer Lopez was just talking about affirmations. She just has various affirmations that she says, and they're obviously working because she seems to be, you know, one of them was like, oh, being ageless. I was like, yeah, that seems to be working, J-Lo. That's pretty good stuff. But she didn't say that she did it in a robotic way. She was talking about like, oh, it's the, you know, positive mindset and thinking positive, and she teaches her children. So she's not going, I'm so beautiful, I'm so beautiful, I'm so beautiful. Like, she just doesn't seem to do that. The other person who came the closest to saying robotic affirmation was Lady Gaga. She said you just have to say something over and over again until the lie becomes the truth. So that's pretty close to robotic affirmation, because she didn't say like, oh, I put loads of effort into trying to believe it. But of course, that's not the only technique that she used. And she talked about, let me see if I've got the quote. She said, you have to have a sense of your own greatness and your own ability in a very deep place inside you. That does not sound like mindless affirming to me. She is not just reciting words. She's feeling it. You've got to feel it. So we've already talked about how getting into the feeling of having what you want is so much more powerful energetically. It's just going to radiate so much more power out. But it's also more fun, and I don't understand why people don't want to do a thing that's fun. What's wrong with you guys? Esther Hicks always says, why are you arguing for your limitations? And I always think this when people start saying like, oh no, you don't have to feel good. Just say it robotically. Just do it with no feeling and it will just happen. And I think, why are you arguing against feeling good? Like, what's wrong with that? I have heard so many people say like, oh no, you can't get into a happy place if you're sad. You can't do that. Like, that's impossible. So, you know, just do the robotic affirmation. But this whole idea of like, you can't change your mindset is not correct. And it's a limiting belief. And I know we hate those. To my mind, you can't switch emotions because they're not based on the 3D. Like, that's the whole point, is that you have a place inside yourself, like Lady Gaga was saying, where you decide the truth, so that what's happening in the 3D is irrelevant. So I get it, we're all human, we feel sad when our circumstances are bad, but you don't have to give in to that. Obviously you're going to have really low moments in your life because stuff happens to everyone. But if you're not like at your lowest point in your life, if you're just like, you know, medium emotions, it's not that hard to get yourself into that state. It's so much more enjoyable to get into that state of a high vibration, high frequency. Like, why would you not want to do that? Have you ever been having a bad day and then you go out with your friends and you maybe have a drink, maybe go dancing, and then you're on the dance floor and your favourite song comes on and you're like, ah, and it's just like you feel good because you're living in that moment and everything else is irrelevant. And that's kind of what this is all about. It's, you know, ignoring the 3D, you get into a particular mindset, you feel the feelings, and it really doesn't matter what is going on around you because it's what's going on within you that matters. So I don't really understand why people are arguing like, no, don't feel good when you do this. Like, I just don't get it. Feel good. It's more fun than not feeling good. It's more fun than just saying stuff in a monotone. Maybe you are manifesting being like the biggest movie star in the world. You could say it over and over again, like, biggest movie star in the world, I'm the biggest movie star in the world. Or you could get into that feeling of like how it feels to walk on set and everyone's like, oh, hey you, hey big movie star. That sounds like so much more fun. Like, I know that people like to say that like there's a huge difference between daydreaming and manifesting. It's not really a huge difference. I mean, if you're feeling good, you're manifesting. I know the technique a lot of people like to do is the videotape technique, where you literally just take one moment representing whatever it is you're trying to manifest and just play that over and over again. But then that's essentially just a visual repetition, isn't it? As opposed to the verbal repetition that is of affirmations. And again, like, the more you feel, I think the more effective it's going to be. But if you feel like just having a long daydream, maybe you're going through the whole day of like your dream life, if that's fun to you, then you should do that. And I just feel like imagining the whole day unfolding, that's going to be so much more enjoyable than just going, I'm a movie star, I'm a movie star, I'm a movie star, or whatever it is that you're trying to manifest. So do the thing that's fun. So the fifth point against robotic affirmation is that I think it can encourage obsessive thinking. And I have heard stories of people saying that, it made them really anxious. I think if you have like OCD tendencies, it's probably not the best thing for you to do, because I think there's a lot of sort of counting how many times you've said the affirmation. Have I reached 1,000 today yet? I know there have been various like challenges where people are like trying to say their affirmations a certain number of times a day or a week or a month or whatever. I think the downside of robotically just speeding through, just saying the affirmations, is that you're not going to have any time for self-examination. So if with traditional affirming, you would maybe have something that's, I don't know, let's say that I'm lovable, when you don't believe that you are. And every time you say it, you kind of go, okay, what feelings are coming up? What objections is my brain coming up with to say to this in response to this affirmation? And that way you work through some of the issues. You're like, oh, that thought came out of nowhere. Oh, that's interesting that I've got these. The more that you say things over time, the more like opposing thoughts are going to just float up that you maybe weren't aware that you believed. But if you're just steamrollering through, like, no, just repeat, you're not going to have that kind of stillness to let those thoughts float up. So you're never going to address them. So you're just going to gloss over them. And I know some people are fully in favour of just glossing over stuff. They're like, no, there's no merit to, trying to uncover your shadow side or whatever. Why delve into that? You're just going to get messy. But maybe if you're not getting to where you need to be, maybe there's a reason that the repetition and the glossing over isn't working, and maybe you do need to address those things. And I think it just, apart from anything else, I think you're ending up focusing on the wrong thing. It's almost like a red herring that you're focusing on how many times you've said a particular phrase, and you're not really focusing on the manifestation itself. I think there's a danger that you're going to just go down a really obsessive route, and you're going to be saying the thing over and over again. Then when it doesn't happen, you're going to be just completely perplexed and disappointed and think, well, I just need to say it another million times then, and that will do the trick. And I don't think it will. I don't think it's the best for your mental health if you have tendencies to anxiety or obsessive thinking. If you don't, I guess, knock yourself out. And now we're going to explore the positive side of robotic affirming, because I do believe it has some merit. So chanting has always been part of a spiritual practice for many people all around the world. So there's the Ho'oponopono. I think I've said that right, but I'm sure the internet will let me know if I haven't. So that's Hawaiian. You say over and over again, I'm sorry, forgive me, thank you, I love you. Or there's also Namayoho Renge Kyo, which I can't remember the translation. I know there's a lotus there somewhere. But these are chants that are very popular these days. They're almost sort of advertised as they'll just fix all your problems, just keep saying them. And I don't really hear people talking about like, oh, I say them and I try and put loads of meaning into it. I guess the Ho'oponopono, you would say those words with feeling, and maybe you're thinking of a particular person, or maybe you're thinking about yourself and forgiving yourself and loving yourself. So with Nam-myoho Renge Kyo, I don't think that there is a great deal of thought or emotion put into that necessarily. Maybe you might be visualizing while you're doing it, but it's essentially you're just chanting Nam-myoho Renge Kyo, Nam-myoho Renge Kyo over and over and over again. So robotic affirmation isn't a million miles from that, is it? So I think that's quite interesting that, we've almost come full circle that chanting has always been part of a spiritual practice, and now we're just like, oh yeah, I just chant. I mean, robotically affirm. So my second point, and I think this is really key, you can't think two thoughts at the same time. This is a popular thing. Neville Goddard points out that in the Bible, Jesus says you can't serve two masters. Neville Goddard takes this to mean, you can't think about the things you don't want and think about the things you do want. Whether you believe that interpretation is correct of the word that Jesus said, that's by the by. Because I would say it is true that you can't think two opposing thoughts at the same time. You can kind of flip-flop between them. And I think a lot of us, if we're thinking, am I going to get this thing or am I not? Am I going to get it? Am I not? That's the danger, because it's like you need to be fixed on, I am going to get it because I'm deciding I'm going to get it. I think this is where robotic affirming really comes into its own, because these days everyone knows like positive thinking is better than negative thinking. But that doesn't mean that we don't all go down negative spirals sometimes, particularly if you have a big problem in your life. So maybe if you're financially struggling, your natural thought process might be something like, I've got nothing in the bank, I don't get paid for another 2 weeks, I need to pay for my car to get fixed, how am I going to afford food this week, I owe someone else money. And you're going to go round and round in this spiral where you just can't see a way out. So if you can just replace those thoughts with the thought, I have more than enough money, I have more than enough money, I have more than enough money, at least you're not spiraling. The third reason is, like Lady Gaga said, you say the lie until it becomes true. It can saturate your mind. And I think this is, the proponents of robotic affirmation, that's the main argument, is that you're saturating your brain with this thing until it becomes true. So that's the basic premise behind affirming. Got to essentially replace your old beliefs. Belief is just a thought you keep thinking. You need to replace that thought with another one that you're going to keep thinking even more. We know that affirming can do this. We know that if you keep telling yourself something, it's going to sink in at some point, and thereby replacing the neuro pathways in your brain and restructuring your brain, essentially. You have to point out, though, of course, it always comes back to feeling. It makes you feel better. And that's the key. I mean, all of these techniques, whether you're visualizing, scripting, making vision boards, affirming, it's not the technique, it's the effect the technique has on you that is going to make the difference. And that is always the case. Robotic affirming, I guess, the premise behind just saying lots of things over and over again really quickly, I mean, you're getting more repetitions in. The faster you say it, the more repetitions you can say, I guess. Theoretically, you would get there faster. And the thing is, like, if you're really trying to put lots of feeling into your visualizing or affirming or whatever, you can't really do it like while you're driving, whereas you could robotically affirm while you're driving, or even like while you're watching TV. Maybe, I know some people say they chant while they're watching TV, because it doesn't really take any brain power and you can still kind of listen to whatever's going on. I mean, just any time when you're going to be zoning out, why not just robotically affirm? Because what else are you going to be doing with your brain in those moments? And if you just think of it as like hours in your day, there are hours when you can really get into the feeling of the wish fulfilled or get into a visualization or whatever. But there are going to be lots of times where you can't quite do that, but you could robotically affirm. Also, if you're robotically affirming, like while you're doing all these things, while you're, mowing the lawn or whatever, that's more time that you're not spending in the negative state. And if robotically affirming for those minutes where you could spiral or you could let your mind wander, but no, you're going to robotically affirm, that's actually a really great discipline for your mind. So my fourth reason is, I think robotic affirmation really comes into its own when you're at rock bottom. Because if you are absolutely miserable, it is harder to get yourself into a state of like, oh yeah, I live my perfect life, everything's working out great. Like, sometimes you might be able to convince yourself and get yourself into a state where you're like, yeah, I can feel it. And you can use, particular tools. Like, I generally will feel better if I listen to really good music. But sometimes even that, like if I'm just in a kind of neutral mood and I want to get myself really high so I can get that energy moving, I'll listen to pop music. And it doesn't take very long, especially if I dance around a little bit, that really changes the feeling in my body. And I think that's always going to help. But if I'm really at rock bottom, that's not going to work. I'm just going to find the music annoying. So I think that is when just saying something over and over again, like I said, at least you're not thinking negative thoughts. So there's that. And, secondly, maybe it will end up making you feel better. Maybe you'll end up believing it if you keep saying it enough times. I think this is a really good tool for people who are not feeling good. Maybe if you're new to manifesting as well. I think the more experience that you get at manifesting, the more skilled you get at learning how to stop yourself spiraling or snap yourself out of bad mood. So I think if you're new to this, then robotic affirmations are a really good way to just stop yourself from going down a road that you don't want to go down. I think we can put a lot of pressure on ourselves, especially when it comes to energy work, because it's constantly like, am I doing this right? Has that made any difference? So if you can just think, well, I'm not going to worry about whether I've evoked the right emotions. I have to really feel this, otherwise it's not going to work. I'm just going to say it. I'm just going to say it this many times, and if I can do that by the end of the day, then I will have done my job. And I believe that will make a difference, therefore it will. That seems like a really great way to do things without putting any pressure on yourself. And my fifth point in favour of robotic affirmation, which is a kind of a culmination of all of these, the way I see it, robotic affirmation is like bike stabilizers. You know, when you're learning to ride a bike and you have those two little wheels on either side that just keep you upright? Robotic affirming is like that. It's not going to propel you forward necessarily, but it is going to just keep you up. It's going to stop you from falling. It's going to stop you from going over into the ditch. It's just going to keep you upright so that while you are upright, you can then use your legs to propel yourself forward. So it's almost like the robotic affirmation are the stabilizers, and then the getting in, living in the end, getting to the feeling, all of the other stuff, that's the forward motion. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I'm sure there are lots of people who will disagree with everything I've said. Feel free to comment below. But if you're someone who has been puzzled over why your robotic affirmations haven't worked the same way that your friends have, I hope this has gone some way to explain why that might be. So yeah, thank you for joining me today, and thank you for liking the video. Thank you for subscribing to the channel, and I will look forward to seeing you next time. Cheerio!